Hey guys, I'm Dean Thomas, and welcome back to this week's Rewind Reviews here on After Credit Movie Chats. This segment works by me simply reviewing the movies I watched over this past week, all of which that are either now on DVD or they're streaming. So they're all things you guys can easily go check out yourself right now if you want to. The movies that I watched this past week were 1. The Great Escape, 2. Avengers Age of Ultron, 3. Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, and lastly, X-Men First Class. Let's start with The Great Escape. The Great Escape is a 1960s movie starring, the late great action hero Steve McQueen, and it focuses around like a prison camp basically during World War II, a German prison camp where soldiers from the Allied forces are all taken to when they're captured. And the story kind of follows those guys and how they try to escape, and it's almost a funny thing of how it's a record sort of thing. These guys gloat about how many times they've escaped. Steve McQueen's character escaped like 17 times or something like that. Like it was a ridiculous amount. And this is it's all based on a true story, which is the crazy part. The movie, for being a prison camp, what surprised me is it's not necessarily dark. Like you would have thought, some pretty gruesome, brutal stuff here. They're relatively well taken care of, and they even like crack jokes with the guards, and there's actually some unexpected funny humor throughout the movie, which I thought was fun because it was an easier watch. Now, whether or not it maybe have been totally accurate, I don't know about that. I would have assumed they were a little bit darker than this, but I wasn't there, so I can't actually say. And that could also just be a product of this movie being a 60s movie. They may not have been able to accomplish that, or they really didn't feel that they should accomplish that. But that made it an easier watch, and I really enjoyed it. And this movie is just under 3 hours long as for running time, where last week I reviewed Lawrence of Arabia. Thought that movie could have been trimmed down some. I mean, that movie's pushing 4 hours, but it could have been trimmed down some. Where here, I thought every scene in the movie needed to be there. I thought what they had filmed needed to be in the movie, and they really couldn't have cut it down, which makes it much more enjoyable because I was never bored of any sort. And that's what I really liked, is it kept you engaged. The humor was funny, but the plot of which is these guys, which is the true story, them trying to break over 200 inmates out at the same time through an elaborate tunnel scheme that they're creating, and it takes months on preparation. And it's just a fascinating story and kind of funny how they go about it. Now, the later second half of the movie gets on to the escape, which really works. But then the end of the movie, I don't want to give too much away, but some pretty dark stuff goes down, but it's not painted in the darkest of tones, which I thought was a little interesting. Once again, that could have been a product of the time this movie was made. I don't know if that's what they were going for or weren't going for. It probably could have been darker to hit a little bit more of an emotional impact, but you still felt the impact, so it still worked. Could have worked a little bit better, but overall, I think the movie did and what it was set out to accomplish, and I really enjoyed it. It took me a while to get up to this movie because it's 3 hours long. It's hard to get yourself. It took me a few days to watch it. I just broke it up into increments, but really liked the movie, and I would consider going back and rewatching it. So I would suggest all of you guys go out and watch it. So The Great Escape, starring Steve McQueen, I would give an 8.4. Could have gone, I thought maybe the tone was a little weird, could have been a little bit darker to hit more of an emotional impact. But overall, really enjoyed it. Really cool story, and Steve McQueen, really starting to like that guy as far as an actor goes, and I'm looking forward to watching more of his stuff. Up next, I watched Avengers Age of Ultron. Just bought it on DVD about a week ago, really, because that's about a week ago when it was released on DVD. Now, I really, really enjoyed this movie the first time I saw it in theaters, but then the more I thought about it, it started to go down on my list as far as Marvel movies were concerned, because I felt it was a little too campy at times. There's so many times where they could have such an emotional impact, but they went with the joke instead to make it lighthearted, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that. Like, you set up these dark, emotional times, run with it. The story was a little rushed as far as Ultron coming into presence, coming into being. Thought that was a little rushed. Now I know the movie's already almost 2.5 hours long. They probably had to cut a lot out. Ultron, they were building up to be this big bad villain, and he's a great villain in the movie. The way James Spader portrays the movements of Ultron, the personality almost mimicking Tony Stark, because Tony was the one that created Ultron. Very humorous, much more life and personality to Ultron. They probably could have been a dull robot, because that's what he could have been. He is a robot. But that worked. His voice worked very well, but at the same time, I wrote in an article for myself on the site After Credit Movie Chat, was that Marvel's villains aren't always the greatest. They're a little weak, or they're one-offs, meaning they show up for one movie to serve a bigger purpose for the hero, and then they're gone. And for the movie being titled Age of Ultron, it kind of implies he was going to be around a while. He's going to do something. Now, I believe the age refers more to his plan, which you know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. But he once again was just a one-off. He served his one purpose to move on, which almost felt like he was leading into Civil War. But what I did like, that being Captain America 3 Civil War, but what I did like is it didn't actually hit you over the head with references of, oh, here's what's coming next. This is just getting you there. It did focus on this one, but it also didn't add a ton to the story. You got a little bit more background, but overall it's a bunch of cool action scenes, I might add. Although the first opening scene, I thought the CGI was a little over the top, and you could tell it was CGI. But other than that, the other action scenes are a lot of fun. This movie is just a lot of fun, which is what it's going for. It wasn't exactly the Empire Strikes Back of sequels where it gets darker or really forwards the story. But overall, it's a good movie, and when I watched it on DVD, I did enjoy it more than what I had started to build in my head of how much I disliked it. So I would give Avengers Age of Ultron about a 7.6. Really a fun movie. Could have been taken a little bit darker, maybe a little more seriously, less jokes. Some of the story plots were rushed, like, Thor's, time machine hot tub thing. That was a weird thing that wasn't really explained in the movie. I mean, it leads into Thor Ragnarok, but overall in the movie, it's just a weird little subplot. But overall, it's a fun Avengers movie. I mean, you got the whole team back together. The dialogue between them is great. It's funny. You add in some new characters in Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. But it could have used a little bit more work and maybe added a little bit more other than just to be fun. But overall, it was fun, and I enjoyed it. So 7.4 out of 10. Alright, up next would be Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. This is Kubrick being one of the great directors. He's heralded for his work. I had only seen Full Metal Jacket of his, so I wanted to catch up on more, and you hear a lot about this. I heard Heath Ledger used this character in A Clockwork Orange to model his Joker portrayal off of slightly. I kind of see that. Now let's break the film up into about two halves, because the first half of the movie kind of goes through, I don't know, it's like this, it's a strange world that it inhabits, and it's about this group of four guys who kind of go around and like they murder and they rape people just for the fun of it. And the main character is part of this group, and then getting into the second half, which I'll elaborate more on later, he starts becoming an experiment for the government trying to cure these crimes, like kind of cure the mental sickness these people had. But as far as the first half of the movie goes, it was like a weird, exotic porn movie. Like, all the nudity was just unwarranted. It was like torture porn sort of stuff, and it was just weird and completely unnecessary. A lot of it was like, this isn't adding anything to the story. It's just weird, and it was hard to watch. And it took me a couple times. I could watch about 10 minutes at a time. I was like, I just can't do this. It's just weird. I don't get it. So then I kept coming back. But once you get past all of that, which is very hard to do, it was for me, you get into the second half of the film where he is finally going under these treatments and stuff, and that's where it caught my attention, and it got good. The acting of it, but both it's a very simple story, but also on a very large philosophical kind of thing. You get him starting to be exposed to what he was doing, and then he starts to learn what he was doing was bad, and then they implant it in his mind of what he was doing, and he starts to just hate it. He can't even accept what he did almost. And that's what I liked. It was no longer weird. There was a purpose to the movie, and the story was moving forward, and I liked that a lot. And that's where I think the movie redeemed itself. But the first act or so in the movie was so weird and bizarre that I just couldn't get into that, and it lowers my overall score of the movie a lot. So it's going to be a lot lower than I think a lot of people might like, but it is my opinion, and it's how I saw the movie, because I know this movie is considered such a great piece of art, and that's why I felt it was a little too artsy even at times at the beginning, the set pieces and designs. So I'd give A Clockwork Orange about a 6.6. the second half of the movie was much better, but the first half was so weird to me that I couldn't get into it, and it lowered my score dramatically. So I would give it a 6.6. That might upset a lot of you people. Maybe you haven't seen the movie and you can go watch it and maybe see if you agree or disagree with me as well. That would be the whole point, for you guys to go see these movies, or if you have, to comment below and stuff so we can get into a conversation about these. Lastly, I watched X-Men First Class. X-Men Days of Future Past, the sequel to this, is just one of my favorite movies in the past couple years. It is so great, and I love the X-Men franchise, and it continues to creep up. So I wanted to go back and watch the first reboot, but not really reboot, of the X-Men franchise, X-Men First Class, where we get the younger side of all the heroes that we had gotten to know in X-Men 1 and X2, the X-Men United. So, this one stars James McAvoy as Professor X, and Michael Fassbender as Magneto, Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. And this movie just paints these characters so well, to the point of where it adds so much to what we had seen in the original series and didn't take away a single thing. It only added. The relationship between Magneto and Professor X, and this is so great because you see where their friendship is, and you see really how good of friends they are. But then you see the differences in what they believe, with both the differences between humans and mutants, and you see why Magneto is the way he is, where he comes from, why he hates the humans and thinks the mutants are the future. And Michael Fassbender is becoming what probably is one of my favorite actors. The guy kills it every single time. He is an absolute thespian, just a flat-out actor. And he is so good in this. He portrays Magneto so well. You could almost see him growing into Ian McKellen as he would get older. You kind of see his villainous side, but it's not just bad. It's for what he believes is the greater good, and you see how he becomes so powerful. And the dialogue and dynamic between Professor X and Magneto is what makes this movie. The other side mutants are good and they're intriguing, but these two on screen is why you would watch this movie. And if you're an X-Men fan, I think you're going to love it. And hopefully you did love it if you saw this movie. It's a couple years old, so I hope you guys have seen this movie. If not, go check it out right now. Matthew Vaughn, who you guys know from the most recently Kingsman, The Secret Service. The guy's got such a great style. He blended so well into this franchise, brought some new life into it after the disasters of X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. The franchise was starting to go downhill, and then suddenly he just skyrocketed up towards the top again. And now we're leading, which brought us Days of Future Past, which I absolutely love, and we're getting X-Men Apocalypse in May of next year, which is climbing towards my most anticipated. It might even be over Captain America Civil War right now, because of what Matthew Vaughn did to reinvigorate the franchise, what Bryan Singer was able to do when he returned to it. X-Men First Class is such a good movie, and the way they set it in the 60s is cool, and they really paint the 60s vibe well. So X-Men First Class is so good. 8.7 out of 10. I can watch this movie over and over and over again. And that would be it, guys. That would be the 4 movies I watched this past week. I hope you've seen all of them, or you've seen most of them, and hopefully you can jump into the comments below or tweet me at AC Movie Chats on Twitter. We can get into a good conversation over them, because I just love talking movies, and I hope you guys would love to talk about them with me. You can also visit our website, aftercreditmoviechats.wordpress.com, which check out all kinds of stuff. We got news stories going up all the time over there. We got reviews going up, all sorts of stuff. So keep checking back on there. Keep following our YouTube channel right here. Subscribe. Keep watching all the reviews that we put up here as well. Keep watching Rewind reviews. I hope you guys enjoy them. And I'll see you next week with the movies that I watched this upcoming week. Thanks.